me ask you a question. Have recent events made it difficult for you to find your true sense of happiness? Maybe you've not even realized that you've kind of lost that inner joy. I mean, life is full of challenges, and it's normal to feel stressed. It's normal to be worried and anxious from recent times. But how long has it really been since you fully had that deep belly laugh or sense of internal happiness about you? Would you like to learn how to really create happiness, true happiness from the inside out, without relying on any external circumstances to change in order for that happiness to come through? Joining me is Udo Erasmus. He is a pioneer in the health and wellness industry. He has an extensive education on biochemistry and biology. He has a master's degree in counseling psychology as well. And you might know Udo from the amazing oil he created, Udo's Oil, which is called Udo's Choice 369 oil. I absolutely have always loved Udo's oil, and it's still one of the most popular healthy flaxseed oils used today. And Udo quickly realized that to achieve total health, complete health, people really need to do more than just nourish the body. They need to nourish their soul. They need to nourish their mental and emotional well-being. And this is why he created the happiness book and course that he has. He's dedicated his life to helping people everywhere to create greater health, greater happiness, greater fulfillment from the inside out. And he's going to share with us about finding happiness. Welcome, Udo. Thanks for joining me.
Beautiful. You said it all. I can sign off now.
You can go now. I really love your evolution. I've loved Udo's Oil forever. And I love that you've discovered that it's not just health that makes us happy. There's a lot of very healthy people that aren't incredibly happy, especially because of recent events. How did you bring this all together?
Well, it really is my own journey. You know, I started in a war, Second World War, and I was a very shy kid, very inward, read a lot of books because they were safe, because my life was not safe early on. And reading was good, so I got to travel the world in a safe way. So I got exposed to lots of things. I got very interested in just about everything. But really, when I was 6 years old is when this, what we're talking about today, began. I listened to adults argue. I was 6 years old. I thought what they argued about was really trivial. So it must have been really trivial, right? And I said,
Yes.
Man, there must be a way that people can live in harmony. And I'm going to find out how. So that became my life thing. It became my driver, and that's what got me through science and through bioscience and through genetics and biochemistry and a year of medicine. I only lasted 1 year in medicine, and psychology, because I was trying to understand how things work, how people work, eventually how I work, and to understand nature really is the ticket here.
Did you notice that when you were younger, that your external environment affected your mood? So if your parents would fight or if there was stress in the household, it would impact your level of happiness?
All the time, because as kids, you suck it up because you're wide open. But
Right.
it was worse than that, because every once in a while I get whacked in the head too.
Yeah,
So
that would make
you think
even
it'll
more
change
upset.
my mood if I get whacked in the head? Of course.
Of course. So
But people
how much do you think that our external environments, even as adults, impact our level of happiness, where it comes to the news that we see or current events or our children's level of happiness, our partner's level of happiness?
I think unless you know, and you have to be very strong for this and very dedicated, that you find a way to live from inside of your own inbuilt feeling that is deeper than stress, you're going to be affected by everything. Everything affects health. Everything affects your mood. Everything affects your I mean, you get your information from there, you get your interpretations from there, you hear the tone of voice from there, and the tone of voice sometimes carries more meaning than the words that are used. And whatever is changing on the outside, you're immediately drawn to it because it's a survival instinct. Whenever something changes, you have to assess it because it's either a friend or it's foe or it's irrelevant. And when depending on what your assessment in will determine how you respond or react to it. If it's irrelevant, you just ignore it. But if there's any sense of, oh, this could be dangerous, then you go into fight or flight mode. And of course, we bringing it back to the news is always, it's never about all the loving things that people do every day, just as a matter of course, whether it's cooking or cleaning or washing or making the beds or, giving the kid a stroke on the head, not a whack, but a stroke on the head, right?
Yeah.
So none of that gets reported on. What gets reported is all the things that are dangerous, all the things you should be afraid of, all the things that get you into fight and flight mode. Because when they can make you afraid, they can pretty much tell you what to do, and you will give up your freedom in order to get safety. How do I know that? I'm an expert on not feeling safe and giving up freedoms for that. I did that most of my time, most of my life.
So our happiness is directly linked to our level of survival.
I wouldn't say the level of survival. I think the interpretation or the sense of survival, because you can, if you're afraid, you can even see danger in places where no danger exists. You'll create it in your own head even.
To get your attention so that you can survive, right?
Yeah. Then you have to deal with hiding or what, whatever you have to do to get to a safe place again. Hiding is one of the most common for kids. If you're angry, you see enemies. If you're peaceful, you see peace. If you're happy, you see happiness. I can look out my window. All the green leaves are laughing. But that would never occur to me if I was angry, right?
Right. So we can actually, our perception of our survival is what impacts our happiness. That's what you're saying. So we could look at those trees outside as something that could fall on you, or you can look at those trees outside as something that's dancing in the wind and smiling at you. It's your perception of it, right?
Right. And it's the same tree.
You're right.
Doing
right.
That, right.
Right. However, we have all of these outside influences like television, like even advertising that says you will not survive unless you use this product, and you will not survive unless you have this drug. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the messaging is unfortunately, around that level of basic human survival.
Sure,
right?
Because it's tried and true. It's tried and true. When people are afraid, they're more likely to look for your solution as safety for them. And
it's really great to be aware of that, but tell me a little bit more about that. Being aware of it is the first step, but why is it utilized?
Well, the reason why it's utilized is in the same way we are geared. We come into the world like in our mother's womb. There's not much to do. There's nowhere to go. Everything is taken care of, and it's relatively safe. So when we're there, our awareness is not outside. Our awareness is inside, and it's inside in life, in its source. And we basically float around in what I call the little Buddha tank for 9 months. Every once in a while they've taken pictures and big smile on the face, but you never see furrowed brows or anything because it's so safe. And we're inside. We're not paying attention to anything in particular, and we're just feeling what it feels like to be in life. Then we come out, everything changes. Now you get cold, your diapers get wet, you get hungry, you got to call for attention, you got to cry for your breast milk. You know, if you're uncomfortable, the only thing you know how to do is cry, and then mommy has to guess what's going on, and there's usually only one or four or five different things at the beginning. And then you start to get to know the world. You're drawn out through your senses into the world, because whenever something changes, this has survival implications. And so you have to become good at making those assessments that I talked about before. And that's how we're built that way. We're built that way. Anytime something changes, immediately you hear a new sound. Oh, what's that? You see something move through your screen. Oh, what's that? And there's where the assessment, is this going to be dangerous to me? And do I need to run or fight? Run if I think it's bigger than me, fight if I think I can win. Or do I hide? Or do I just collapse? Or do I freeze, hoping it won't recognize me because I'm not changing, I'm not moving? Because it moves, it registers change as well. So that's our survival instinct. And whether that's real physical stuff or mental stuff, our body doesn't make a differentiation. So words, like stupid, but somebody says, I'm going to kill you. That's almost the same as being attacked. The words create the same reaction as the action does in terms of survival. What do I do here, right? So and because we're geared that way, anytime you want to get my attention, all you have to do is go like this, right? Oh, right? Or so you hear the words and you maybe get bored by the words. So then when something's going on, that gets your attention. And media is very, very good. They understand that very, very well. Fear sells, danger sells, confusion sells, contradiction sells, because now you're saying, well, he said this and then he said that. And in both ways, they've got your attention. So we get a lot of information that way. Advertisers know that, and charlatans know that, and con people know that, and they find it, and then magicians know that, right? Only they know how to do stuff when you're watching and you don't see that they're moving. So
very skilled, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
It's a whole field of study. It's like stress. It's and the moment things change, that creates stress.
Interesting.
And then it calls for assessment. And then if they keep changing it, you keep assessing, and you never kind of get finished with it. And there's
change is the only constant, isn't it? I mean, things are constantly changing. So are we constantly stressed?
Yes and no. Yes and no. See, that gets your attention. Yes and no. Yes, if your focus is outward, because that's the world of change, right? Everything on the outside. I call it the world of surfaces of things, because you never see the heart of the tree. You see the outline. You never see the inside of the building. You see the outside of the building. So I call it the world of surfaces of things, and everything changes. Seasons change, light and dark changes. Your friends are sometimes very friendly and sometimes not so friendly. They change. People get older. That changes. Everything changes. On the surface of things, everything changes. So yes, if you're living with your focus either in your thoughts, they change all the time, or your body, it's changing all the time, or your social world, it's changing all the time, or the natural world, it's changing all the time. You will always be on the edge of stress. And then what you want to do is pick environments that don't change too fast. Because if it's too fast, then it drives you crazy.
That's why there's so much stress. I'm sorry. I mean, that's why there's so much stress when there's changes in government, or there's changes in jobs, or there's changes in relationship, because the nature of change induces a level of stress if your focus is on the external.
Yeah. And that's also true for We get more and more information, we get more and more contradictions, everything moves faster and faster because of technology and IT and stuff. What I used to do in the 60s when I was a kid, when I'd get too much of the city, and it was a lot slower than now, I would actually spend a day in the woods, because that pace is a pace that's comfortable for humans. In the city, things go a lot faster than in nature, and in technology, things go a lot faster than in the city. And I think a lot of us are having a lot of difficulties with our thought processes just because it's overwhelming. It's too much. We can't process it well. So that's the yes part. Anything that can change will, and just about everything we're aware of changes, fast or slow. Different paces. No, because there's also something in us that never changes. But very few people live into life. Most people live out from life. And when you, yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
well, because when you what?
Because when you get good at knowing how to get present within your being, there is unchangeableness at the core of your being. And in that unchangeableness, you can be happy, you can be content, you can be in peace, you can feel unconditionally loved without anything going on, without anything extraordinary going on. This is not conditional, this is unconditional. This is not, I'll be happy when Lisa says she loves me, right? Or whatever the trip is, right? This is, I will be happy. I am happy because that is my deepest nature. So I just have to go there to get to happiness.
We're going to understand a little bit more about that in a minute, because there's this definite formula to going there, which I love that you outlined, but it does help to really understand the problem first. And is this why people are addicted to stress without even knowing it, unconsciously addicted to crisis and drama and stress, because their focus is purely on the external, and things are constantly in change. So there's going to be a constant addiction to stress, right?
Well, if you're used to that, if that's happening all the time where you live, and it's not just the outside world, but also the mental world, because there's a reflection of the outside world in the mental world, and that's changing all the time. So if you're used to living like that, it becomes kind of like a well-trod track. And if somebody sat you down and say, okay, today we're going to spend the day doing nothing. There will be no change except when the sun goes down, right? But there'll be very little change. And we just want to sit stress-free, really quietly, fully present. Most people would immediately have a problem with that. Or like in 5 minutes, say, oh my God, I got to be doing something. I got to be doing something. That's why I call it addiction to stress, addiction to doing, and all kinds of doing, not drugs and that too, but all kinds of doing. Oh, I got to be doing something, restless. Why? You feel restless. I got to do something. Oh, then you either you go swimming, or you go to the gym, or you go for a walk, or you call a friend, or you read a book, or whatever. A lot of what we do comes out of feeling restless. Well, why are you feeling restless? It's because you're not resting. You're stressing. you're stressing. You're not resting, right? Because when you're resting, then you don't feel restless. And restless is a really good word for it, because this is the life we lead when we don't rest, right? And then what burnout is one of the big problems that comes with it. And before you burn out, you blow up. And so you have emotional outbursts, and you start doing stupid things, and then you make it worse for yourself.
Yes, and this type of person who's unconscious of the level of addiction to stress and addiction to crisis is also seeking attention, according to you, for that level of addiction. Like, look at this changing and look at this happening, and isn't life difficult, and drama and drama and complaining, right?
Right. So we do that for attention because we have learned that when we get screwed up enough, then we get some attention, whether it's from the police or the judge or the social worker or the principal, in the office, or when you act out, you get attention. And we have created a situation where experts on virtually every topic under the sun collect rent on our outbursts, on our things that we say something's missing. But what's missing is not the expert. What's missing is our presence in our own deeper being. So to go to the expert, it will not be helpful. It'd be helpful to the expert, but it won't be helpful to the expert unless the expert has a way of turning you back inside to yourself, because what you're looking for is already there. It's always been there. It's been there ever since you were in the Buddha tank.
I love the Buddha tank. I love that concept. And that is so true. We go from this place where we need nothing, where all of our needs are met, to a place where we are dependent on others for everything.
Everything. Yeah. Yes. Before I came down here, I was upstairs talking to some accountants and lawyers about cross-border. How do you set up a structure for a business cross-border for Canada, US? You sit there and you listen to it, and I'm really smart, and I listen to that. I said, oh my God, this is so complicated. This is so complicated. Say that again. What do you mean? Oh, it is so complicated, and everything has become so complicated because it's detail. And it's like you need a lifetime just to learn about molecules. You can't be good at molecules and legal too, right? Because there's so much information. And that's just like overwhelm is huge.
It is, and especially legal, it's always based on what can happen, what could happen, what if this, then that. And it's constantly anticipating the worst case scenarios to protect yourself against. Yes.
Yeah. And sometimes they tell you that because they want to get your attention and they want you to make use of their services.
Right. But which is a great example. I'm glad you brought that up, because we do need to have a certain level of awareness of things that can happen. We can't live in the Buddha tub all the time. We've got to have a way to be able to look outside for extenuating circumstances, emergencies, things that can happen. We do need to stay aware. You're talking about a balance, though, right?
Yeah, obviously. We talked about it before, right? If you look at the background that I have, I did this on purpose because over here is the clutter. Books, and there's a plate there, and there's glasses there, and some of my tech gadgets are over here. So this is like the clutter world. And on this side is nothing. This is like the world of possibilities. This is where the calm lives. This is where the details are. And you live, and we all live with both of those simultaneously present in our being. And we get to choose the focus. Now, it's not as easy to choose this part, the quiet part, only because we haven't practiced doing it very much. Over here, we're busy all the time, every day. Every day is breakfast and dinner and bathroom and clothing and cars and the whatever is your expertise. That stuff goes in your head, and then you have your gadgets, and you have your I'm a computer and a camera and lights, and so this is so much. We do this every day, and mostly our whole life revolves around that. If you have kids, then keeping an eye on the kids and making sure they get to school on time and that both socks match and whatever all those things are, right? And how much time do we actually say, okay, well, I've just spent 8 hours working. Let me spend at least 8 minutes just getting quiet, maybe just breathing, quietly, being still, oh yeah, it feels good to be alive.
Mm.
And just leaving all the stuff on the outside, just leaving it on the outside, not moving it away, just leaving it on the outside, just being present here. Now, if we could do a little more of this, we would get better balance between that and that.
So
Right?
that brings us to the first step that you're talking about, is only that level of peace can be found in the internal. And taking a moment to tap into that internal sense of peace is the beginning of how to stop being influenced by the outside stressors. But the question is, how do you can focus internally, but what if there's still chaos going on internally? How do you find the inner peace part, Udo?
Well, the chaos is here and the peace is here.
Okay.
The chaos is here because thoughts, they just roam. If you paid attention to all the thoughts you had, if you could put them on a tape recorder, you'd probably say the same stupid thing 60 times. That isn't true in the first place, 60 times to yourself, and maybe give yourself a little bit of adrenaline because you're saying the stupid thing that you don't like that isn't even true, right? But we are trained also because we're verbal and vocal and word-based and education-based. Most of that feeds the head. Most of that feeds your world of concepts. But if you get just like, that's on the surface of your cortex. But if you just focused on the tip of your nose, there's not a single thought there. Not a single thought. If you held one of your teeth, there's not a single thought there. And in the thumb that's holding, there's not a single thought there. And if you look at the surface cortex, chaos, and the entire rest of your body, no chaos. Your feet touching the ground, I'm just moving people's focus. This is what I'm doing on purpose. Mm-hmm. Or what your kneecap feels like, or what your bum feels like sitting on the chair, or how your body feels if you're slouching on the couch, right? Or what it feels like when you just stretch out your arms, right? And you notice how your rib cage comes up. So you're literally present now in an arena of experience as opposed to an arena of thoughts. And happiness, of course, is an experience. Contentment is an experience. Peace is an experience. How do you get from the world of concepts to the world of experience? Breathing, experience, right? If you follow your breathing, it's one of the commonest practices. Even smokers do yoga. Did you know that?
What do you mean?
Well, I got this from a woman I worked with, and we were working in health, and she smoked. So one day I asked her, like, not I wasn't being mean. I said, "Why do you smoke?" She says, "It calms me down." And so I came home from the trip I was on, where we had that conversation, and I was talking to my son, who's a fitness trainer. And I told him that story, and he said, "Well, that's a lot of BS, because when you smoke, you increase all your metabolic factors. Like your breathing rate goes faster and your heart rate goes faster." And so then I started thinking, I love contradictions, because it's like, okay, on the one hand, she's doing it because she says it calms me down. On the other hand, all her metabolic measures are going up. So how come something that makes your metabolic measures go up calms you down? And I realized she's practicing yoga. So what'd she do? She lights a cigarette, and she goes like this.
Oh, wow.
That is the central yoga practice of every culture in the world. So they're actually, I call them material yogis. They think they need a cigarette in order to follow their breathing, when they could actually do it with less side effects and have even a better experience by just doing. Oh yeah, if you got to start, if you start from being smoking, you can still do like this. That's right. And then it takes you about 5 or 10 or 10 or 15 minutes to finish a cigarette. That's a good yoga practice.
There is a yoga practice that's called the straw breath, where you can breathe in and out of the straw, and that can get you to exhale through a slower breathing process. But yeah, I think so that the nicotine and all of that does the opposite reaction from what her assumption is actually to calm herself down.
But it still gives her enough of a breathing to calm her down. So
Interesting.
So if you do the breathing without the cigarette, or you do keep the cigarette as the straw and you just don't light it, look kind of funny, but
I know. Well, now what you're basically saying is you're bringing your attention to your breath. You're bringing your attention to your stillness or to your body, or even if the parts on your body don't feel good, you're putting your attention there, and you're taking your attention off of the clutter, right?
I bring the focus of attention, of awareness, into the space that my body occupies. So now it's me from the inside instead of me from the outside. Look in the mirror, right? This is like, now I'm looking at me from the inside, and you can see something, you can feel something, you can hear something inside, you can taste something inside, and you have all the sensations in your body. But all of those sensations are in your body, which is why you can focus on any of those sensations, because it'll get you out of your head and it'll get you into the world of your own pre-verbal, non-verbal existence.
Now, does this happen in extreme times of stress, or in an emergency? Can you do this, or is this just for everyday type of change and stress?
Well, it's always better not to start doing that practice when the emergency hits. It's always better that you preempt the emergency, because if you do it when you're not under stress, if you do it because you want to know who you are, or your heart aches and you want to deal with your heartache, well, that your heartache disappears when your awareness goes a little deeper than whatever was the external trigger for your heartache. Right? So it's important to do that in peacetime. The reason we drift into wars is because we don't do that when we have the luxury of peace, to deepen the peace. Then what we do is we go around and do stupid things and do sloppy things and don't pay attention to consequences. And then it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. I think if you look at the world right now, you're pretty much seeing the world going in the direction of major chaos. I mean, make 2020 look like a piece of cake.
It's going to be constantly that way, though. I just know that we're in this phase of constant chaos and constant change on a macro and a micro level. And as you know, it affects, that's what you're talking about, though, right?
Yeah, of course. And I don't know what this year's crisis is going to be between now and Christmas, right? Or what next year's crisis.
Variants. There's so many different things.
Global warming. We got 104 degrees in Vancouver today. Never ever happened before. So there's definitely some climate issues. Very easy to use those to make people afraid, and very easy to then direct them and get them to give up their freedom because they want to be led, because they don't know what to do. So and so the idea, all the wise people have always said, fall in love with being alive, fall in love with presence, fall in love with peace. Take time, make time on a regular basis to tap into what in you is whole, not what in you is scattered and isolated and freaked out, because those two always live next to each other. So you literally give that some, give your dramas and traumas some attention, because sometimes they need them, but give peace some attention too, and balance those two, and you get to a point, if you get good at going one way or the other, that you can choose to be happy in the midst of crisis. Most of the time in the midst of crisis, peace is better as a response than getting into the drama.
Okay. So there are a lot of different types of stressors. We've talked about environmental stress, we've talked about a change and so forth. I'd like to ask you about those triggers that stress us, like
Yeah,
maybe a relative or someone who just
yeah.
constantly triggers you that, could be a parent or something like that. How do you not let that, years and years and years of those triggers impact you any longer? That also causes stress. We're
Of
going to
course,
cover a lot of different
of
kinds of
course.
stress here.
And it's work to do that. Ramdas used to say, if you think you're enlightened, just spend a weekend with your family. And it's
Yes.
true. For probably 2 decades, every time I went back with my family, and I'd be, and I was doing a quite quiet practice, and I was getting better at it. And I would go there, and it'd be like I'd be there, and I say, "Yeah, I'm over it, and I'm over them now, and it'll be just really cool." And you know what? 5 minutes, somebody would say something, and boom, I'd be right back into that childhood thing. That, oh yeah, I really hated my brother because he was always bigger than me and smarter than me and more practical than me. So we had this whole thing going on. I would just get triggered. But if I'd have taken my friend with me, who never grew up in my family, who doesn't have my family neurosis, and he heard my brother say the thing that triggered me, then the question is, well, would he get triggered by that? No, because he doesn't own that trigger. He has other triggers for other things that happen in his family neurosis, maybe, but he wouldn't get triggered by something that triggered me. And when I started thinking about that, it was like, oh, why do I get triggered? Because my brother said something and I wanted him to say something else.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he called me his favorite nasty nickname from childhood. But I wanted him to say, Udo, I love you. You're just the best brother I've ever had. That's actually never happened, but whatever, so because it's one way and I want it another way. Now that's like change, right? That's again, it's like it's not lining up. So I'm immediately in survival mode. Immediately. And then we can fight and say, I want you to do that, and you shouldn't do that, and I don't like it when you do that. But usually I didn't. What I would do is I would go away and mope, or sometimes I'd cry. That's what I did as a kid, right? And it literally took a couple of decades where first I had to get strong inside so I was able to go there when I needed to. And then half the time I'd forget. When I hit one of those triggers, I'd forget. I'd forget to go there. Then I got to a point where I said, I know how to go there, but I don't like it that when I then go out in the world, I get completely disconnected again. And then I'm just like bouncing around in the waves again. And I said, there must be a way to go into that place and drag that into the world with me. And then come hell or high water, I am going to stay in this experience. I like this experience so much. This is my most important experience. So I'm going to drag it into the world. And the moment I set that standard, I would notice whenever I got triggered, I would then look at what the trigger was. And I would then do what I needed to do, rephrase it, rethink it, disconnect the trigger. And then I gradually got better and better at staying in that place. I'm still get triggered sometimes, but I get triggered by a lot less things than I used to. So that's really nice. For me, that's really nice. And I would, instead of getting mad at the television, I can just very peacefully and lovingly turn it off. And then I can sit in my room, say, "Man, look at the peace. It's so beautiful here." We have a lot of control over what we focus on. But
So
often we don't practice that either.
So what that old phrase that nobody can make you feel anything, you are in control of your own feelings, is where this comes from. So the person can't.
I would say that saying comes from somebody who did some of their homework and discovered that, and that was their expression of it.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're saying the more you practice, even when you're not in the environment of the trigger, and you practice this internal peace and you practice this internal calm, then being amidst that trigger, that person, you can go back to your daily practice. During the time is not the time to start to practice that. You need to practice it first.
Right. Well, you know what? You can also do it in the middle of the crisis. And there are stories of people who in the midst of like seriously life-threatening, real life-threatening crises go into a state of complete peace and then are
Mhm.
able calmly to deal with what they need to do or ask for the help they need in order to do that. So that does happen, but there's no guarantee on that happening. And
Some
so
people are just naturally calm under crisis too, and those are the people that should be medics. Yes.
who's that?
People who are naturally calm under crisis,
Yeah.
but those are like they should go right into medicine. But this is a learned practice, though. You can really learn how to calm yourself in any type
Yeah.
of environment.
Yeah.
What?
You learn the practice, but you don't create the calmness, right? The calmness is built in. So when I want to be very clear that this
Okay.
peace and this calmness and this happiness that we're talking about and the unconditional love, those exist in every human being, no matter what their story or their situation is, from conception to death. Those exist in the human body, always there, always there, always there. What we need to learn is to move our awareness into that space instead of letting it be dragged out into change and dragged out into this and that and trivial stuff.
That is clear. That is beautifully clear. And I have a question on top of that. What
Mm-hmm.
if someone is listening right now and feels that's not me? I don't have that innate sense of calm. I'm addicted to stress. Actually, stress is the only way that I get anything done because it creates that adrenaline response that gets me to motivate myself to do anything, gives me that
Mm-hmm.
dopamine hit. How do you retrain the brain that uses stress to get things done?
Well, the first thing I say is I'm going to override you on that one. Why? Because I've been doing this for a very long time, and I see it in every human being. So when you say I don't have that in me, you're wrong about not having that in you. It is
Okay.
you. It is life. It is in you. It is not in your mind, but it is in the core of your being. Absolutely everyone. If you're alive, if you're dead, then that piece has left your body. Then you,
But I might have conditioned myself to understand that the stress response is what enables me to get something done.
right. And that's the second thing is that when you look at how people function, stressed or calm, or you can compare it to children playing and adults working sometimes. When you look at this, when you compare the performance, most of the time people perform less well under stress than they do when they're calm. But we have this belief that in order to get people to do things, you need to stress them. It's like fear control, right? The boss gets mad at you. So then it's like, you want to do all the right things? No, but you're not going to do all the right things. You're going to do whatever the minimum necessary to not have him yell at you. You're not going to do the same kind of incredible job you could do if you were just on fire for the incredibleness of the goal that you were working towards. So we most of the time, from calmness, do better, think better, act better, treat people better, and improve our presence, of which our performance is just an expression. In most cases, we
Yeah.
will do that better when we feel whole than when we feel frazzled.
Yep. There's definitely that type of top down mentality where people rule by fear and rule through that. I mean, we see that a lot in our government and to enforce rules, but it also in a business environment, it will burn people out.
Hmm.
It will definitely burn people out.
Yeah.
And so that's when people get overwhelmed and they get frustrated with their boss or job or environment or whatever it
Yeah.
is. It really starts to create overwhelm inside, internal
Yeah.
overwhelm.
And then in the business, in the work, you know, people are, there's also something, we know what it means to be vindictive. So if I don't like the boss, I can find ways of making it difficult for him to meet his boss's expectations just by things I do with other people. You know, I can be looking to doing my job on the surface, and in behind it, I got another agenda that I'm also playing.
Uh-huh.
And then anytime I can trip them up and not get caught, then I might just do that. Why people do it all the time.
Yeah. Well, that, and also people get vindictive, they get overwhelmed, things come from this level of overwhelm. You talked about a stress style by a specific Hans Seal or Selye, where he talked about 3 different types of stress.
Yeah. Well, he called it the stress syndrome, GAS. The what was it called? General Adaptation Syndrome. And the idea was that it goes through 3 stages. The first one is that you get a stressor, you notice a stressor, and then your system cranks up into fight or flight, or freeze, or withdraw, or collapse mode. That's all. Those are the stress responses. And that if it's acute, if it's just a short-term stress, and you deal with it by running or fighting or whatever it is you do, and then you calm down and you relax.
Okay.
If this is not an acute stress but a chronic stress, then you go into the second, which is the
Resistance.
the resistance phase.
Yes.
And your high blood pressure is chronically up, and you're chronically on edge, adrenalized, but everything seems okay for a while. But you're churning out your stress response capacities in your body. So your adrenals and your stomach, you probably get some stomach problems because if you're chronically stressed, your blood goes to your extremities for fight or flight, and it goes out of the digestive system, and then you start not digesting your food well. And so those things are going on, but you're still functioning. And then the third one, it was called exhaustion, where literally you have exhausted your capacity for dealing with stress because you've used up all your resources. And then literally a very tiny additional stress can kill you because you're burned out, right? Because
that's where disease happens right there. That's the opportunistic.
Well, then disease or death happens. Death is quite a serious disease.
Yes.
So to speak, right?
Most people live in that place of resistance. Yes.
Yeah. So now what do you do? So what do you do in that situation? I told you this story about if I get upset because my brother uses a particular trigger word for me, and my buddy who didn't grow up with me isn't triggered by that. If you're in a situation of stress, then think about what it is that you're actually doing. So something happened that you wanted to be different, so it's not different. And then you say something to yourself. Whatever it is, it would be different for different people. This should never happen. How dare they? Or, whatever it is. And it's always about a situation or a person. If you didn't care about that situation, you had no opinion on it, you didn't have a preferred outcome, you could just let it be the way it is. And that, in a way, is much easier when you feel whole to let things unfold the way they unfold, right?
Yeah. Yes.
If you could put yourself in a position where you don't have an opinion about it, then you wouldn't get stressed. So what that means is it's not that the situation or the person stresses you. It's what you do in your head that stresses you. So you use them, I say, as an excuse to trigger yourself. So the situation doesn't trigger you, you trigger yourself. And it just becomes your right?
So so you can be more neutral to the environment, to the stressor.
If you were neutral, if you were saying, I'm okay, you're okay, it's all okay. Much harder to stress you if you can be in that state of being, right?
What about going to, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so actually, so what I'm saying is, now we can't blame it on the television because we started there, right? Blame it on the television, blame it on the government, blame it on, blame it on, blame it on, blame it on. And it's okay if that's the source. But the truth is, if you didn't take any of that stuff in, then it wouldn't stress you. So actually, we're using the government as an excuse to stress ourselves. And they do stupid things, but maybe you don't even have to have an opinion about that, right? So then what I say to people is, okay, so you're doing this, you're stressing yourself, it's frying your adrenals, it's making you sick, you feel overwhelmed, and oh my God, you're tearing your hair out, right? What if, what should you do about it? And my short answer to that is you should mind your own business. Right? And it's like, well, that's easy for you to say, I have to push my mother around in a wheelchair or whatever is the story, right?
Not always that easy, yes.
Yeah, it's not easy, but nobody said it has to be easy. But you could say it's easy and make it easier, because if you say it's difficult, it will be more difficult than it would be if you didn't say that.
True.
But apart from that, it is possible. Because somebody wrote me this letter about, how can I have peace when, my mother had a stroke and I'm driving around, and you could hear the resentment in her voice, in her words. She wasn't saying it, she was writing it. You could hear the resentment in the words, that she just hates that she has to cart her mother around.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, it is possible, in the realm of possibility, it could be possible that she could love pushing her mother around in a wheelchair. Right? So you have to then ask, what are the questions? What are the words? What are the concepts? What are the ideas? What are the thoughts between the act of pushing your mother around in a wheelchair and your attitude about it? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then given that you understand it's your attitude that is causing you the problem, then you can change your attitude. Now, how do you change your attitude? The best attitude change that I know is you walk out of your head and you walk into the beauty, the magnificence, the awesomeness, the light of your own existence.
In the moment.
In the moment. And that is your business. Now, why do I say mind your own business? This is your business. You get to be alive for maybe 100 years if you're lucky. Mm-hmm. You didn't exist any time for 13 billion years before that, and you won't exist any time for 4.5 billion years after that, after which the sun is supposed to eat the planet. I don't know if you know that story. Is the sun will collapse and turn into a red star, and will then incinerate the planets.
And when is this happening?
4.5 billion years. So
okay, we got time.
Don't worry.
Okay.
It's not going to happen next week, okay. Right? So, but here you are, dust, water, air, and solar energy, all mixed up to have wavy hair, teeth, lips, human body. The number one purpose on the planet, or your business, in my view, is that you take time to enjoy the incredible beauty of what got put together out of just dust, air, water, and sunlight. If that's your business, then mind your own business. And guess what? If you were so busy feeling good about being alive, would you have time to get stressed about the trivial things on the outside that you need to deal with?
That is beautiful. That is really beautiful
But
that we are put together by this sun and dust and energy, and that just to pay attention to that, to have appreciation for that,
yeah,
sinks you right into peace.
yeah. And
Yes.
say that's the primary purpose of being alive for every human being. Because if you don't enjoy this gift, nobody can enjoy it for you, and it's a wasted gift. So to enjoy the gift you've been given for your own enjoyment. Now, there are people who would like you not to do that, but to serve their agenda. But this is a really good agenda for you, is to sit and enjoy how incredible it is to be alive in the short time that you have. And then the secondary purposes is pushing your mother around in a wheelchair, or writing books, or doing podcasts, or doing whatever it is that we do that we think of as our profession or our calling.
Purpose, right.
But that's always secondary. Because
That's interesting.
Because if you don't bring all of yourself into your calling, then you're only dealing with half of your calling.
What if somebody has that natural anxiety or depression inside them? So when they look in that place of being inside, they see darkness and they see anxiety and they see sadness.
Okay, first of all, darkness is not depressed. Darkness is just absence of light.
Okay.
Right?
Yes, yes.
If you're the awareness in you that is the core of your existence, that is the source of your existence, that is the peace that I'm talking about, that is unconditional, that is also the source of the entire creation of the entire universe, same peace, here and everywhere. That cannot be sad. It's beyond sadness. It cannot be sad. It cannot be depressed. It cannot be anxious. There is no anxiousness in awareness. If you look at something, let's just like simple, right? If you look at, like I look at the light here, if I just pay attention to the looker, something is seeing this, and it's kind of mysterious. We can't grab it and say, look, here's my awareness. Look at my awareness. Isn't it cool? Because it has no substance, but it has a presence. So if I pay attention to that awareness is not affected by this light. That awareness.
So you're paying attention to yourself, your own awareness.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you find out where it is. But for you, the core it's at the core of your being. And from there, it goes through life. That's your power. That's the solar energy that you run on. And then it goes through, then it goes, that light shines out. That's your personal nature. Unconditional love is your personal nature, because you are that light. You look at all of this, the light's not affected by it either. Like the light that I am is not affected by the light on the lamp. That's an outside
True.
light. When you're anxious, you're in your head with thoughts. Every emotion has thoughts attached to it. States of being don't. That's one of the very nice distinctions between them. So states of being have no thoughts attached to them. They're just experience.
Being. It's just states of being.
Yeah, states of being. All your emotions have thoughts attached to them. So you know that whenever you get depressed, what are the thoughts? When you're anxious, what are the thoughts? And depression is often hopelessness. And you kind of say, I tried so hard and it never worked, and it just never worked, and it's never going to work for me. And woe is me.
There's external circumstances that are influencing.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. And then what we do in our head with it too. Right. And of course, if a kid, was learning to walk and first time fell on its schnoz, you could just say, well, you know what, this is never going to work for me, and I'm just not going to get up anymore. But that's not what happens, because he he doesn't have the head trip for that yet, right?
They would never walk.
And he
Yes.
gets up
Right.
and he gets up and he gets up and he falls down and he falls down and he falls down and he fails his way to success, right? And eventually he's running around the block. In a way, everything we do is like that. So you try something and it fails. If it's a good thing to do, if it's not just a stupid thing to do, and I'm not the judge of that, but if it's a good thing to do, then persist, 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 because eventually the whole universe will change just for you to be successful. When you get depressed, you're quitting too early. That's one.
Right.
That's one way to put it. And then
So
when you're anxious, you're looking at what if, what if, what if. I had that. I know those. I know those emotions very well. I've had them both.
Yes.
Very. I was afraid of flying. I would cry on the plane because I thought we were going to crash. And I realized as I sat with it, because I was flying a lot. I was on the road 6 to 9 months every year for 15 years.
Wow.
And
you were
so
afraid of flying?
And I was afraid of flying, and I was flying all the time. And so what it forced me to do is look at what am I doing? And what it was is like, what if we crash? I could have said, and the chances of, the real chances are, what if we land safely? What if we have the incredible flight? What if all the bumps are just fun in the sky? What if? But I was saying, what if we crash? But the track record is there are a lot of safe landings for every crash, right? I mean,
Yes.
thousands,
Yes.
tens of thousands. Yes. But I was focusing on every flight. What if we crash? And we never did. And we never did. And the whole time I was doing that, I was making up this story, and I was adrenalizing myself, and I was freaking myself out. And I realized that what was missing was my discipline. I was not using life's computer for something useful. I was drifting. I was letting it drift. And then I got more deeper into the practice of quiet. And there's a place in that practice where it doesn't matter if you land safely or crash. It doesn't actually matter. Because one day you're going to crash anyway, right? And one day it's over, right? So I got into a place where that was not even a question anymore. Here I am. I'm going to where I'm going. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And if I crash, it'll be very quick and everything will be over. Right. And so from that perspective, it didn't make sense for me to sit there. What if we crash? What if we crash? And what if we crash? And making myself feel miserable. Right. One time I was so afraid. I went from New York to Chicago, and then from Chicago to LA. So I got on the plane in New York. By the time I was in Chicago, I was a complete anxiety mess. And I didn't even phone the guys who were going to pick me up at the airport in LA because I was so sure we weren't going to make it. And it happened to be there's some very bumpy thunderstorms. And of course, the bigger the bumps were, the greater the anxiety became because of my thinking was so undisciplined. Right?
Interesting. I mean, that is a very interesting point about disciplining your thoughts into a place of peace.
Yeah.
And
if your thinking is supposed to serve life, because life is the treasure on this planet. This is the planet of life. That's what makes it interesting. So if thinking is life's computer for this body, and its job is to care for life, how exactly is it serving life by sitting and saying over and over again, what if we crash? What if we crash? How's that serving life? It's not serving life.
And you're just living in the future too. You're living in the what if.
And you're living in imagination because you're imagining it. It's not even happening. So it's fundamentally, if thinking is good for something, that's a complete waste of time. Right?
Interesting.
That's the conclusion I came to. And guess what? I'm not afraid of flying anymore. Because I was able to recognize what I was doing and then change it. So now I go into the airport and say, yay, we get to fly. Yay, we get to fly. Right? And yay.
Because internally you're safe And
Yeah,
and
something in me is deathless, so I'm in touch with that a little bit too. That's really helpful. Sorry, and I
that's
interrupted you.
beautiful. Oh, tell me a little bit about that. What do you mean by that?
Well, a human being, we think of a human being as a body, but
Mhm.
actually, human being is a first of all, we're embedded in nature. So we're not a separate part. We're a part of nature, and we're part of a social body too, right? And then we're a physical body. And then we have ideas that come from what we've experienced and how we think about things. So they have a physical body. And then we have life. Well, life is indestructible. Energy is indestructible. Solar energy is indestructible, right? It flows through the body, runs the show, then goes where it goes. Indestructible. Can't get sick, never dies.
Hmm.
Can't get anxious, can't get depressed. Because life energy is a different level than the mind. The mind, life energy makes the mind possible. But what we do with the mind is not directed by life if it's not in service of life.
So it exists beyond us, even
And,
though our
and
physical body is gone?
yeah, then there's one more, which is the awareness that is everywhere, formless, indestructible, never gets sick, never dies, has no inside or outside. That's like really formless. No inside, no outside. Well, you can't imagine it, but you can experience it. And that's connected from the core of your being to infinity. And
Isn't
you,
that the soul?
well, it depends. I don't use that word because it has so many different definitions. Some people uh, equate soul and spirit. Some people equate soul and mind. Some people equate soul with awareness. And so I'm never sure what that word means, but I know what awareness is. I know what energy is, and I know what mind is. So I don't know where soul goes.
Okay.
And in terms
Yeah.
of, yeah, it's I would say the way it's used is so sloppy that I prefer not to use it. And
So what
then
do you call this formless sense of being?
human nature, awareness, peace. It's the unconditional peace. That
Mm.
peace, if the plane crashed and my body got ripped to pieces, that peace would not change at all.
Hmm.
And neither would the life energy. They're indestructible
I
because they're formless to begin with. You can't destroy the form of something that has no form, but it is part of our nature. And we tend to ignore that's another part of, if you become strong in the indestructible part of your nature, you're much harder to make afraid and much harder to control. And so, but why is that? Because then I can live by what makes sense. And if I'm living in unconditional peace and unconditional love, I'm probably going to be a pretty good citizen. And I'm not going to be
right.
stealing stuff, and I'm not going to be hurting people, and I don't need a lot of laws simply because I'm so appreciative of being that I
Mm.
need more stuff.
And if you have lost ones that are loved deeply by you, then you can appreciate the love that that person or animal or whatever it is gave you if you live in this state more.
Yeah, I still talk to my mother.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she passed in 1986, 1987.
And you feel her presence as this energetic being
Yeah,
because
but
it's
but
formless.
not like, all of a sudden there's an apparition on the wall. No,
Right.
it's
No,
just
no,
like
no.
I'm in the presence of all life when I'm in the presence of life, and I'm in the presence of all awareness when I'm in awareness inside.
Uh-huh.
The access is inside, but the awareness is everywhere. The access is inside, but the love is everywhere,
For
right? And
anyone who's ever
I,
lost a loved one, when they have that level, that awareness of that loved one, they
yeah,
feel their presence because
feel
it
the
matches the awareness within them.
feel the presence, feel the love, feel the joy. Remember remember the beauty of the relationship, rather than crying because
they're not there anymore, or
they're not there in physical form, because they are,
form.
right? That's why people talk about the ancestors being present, right? When they do their really important meetings, when they
Yes.
invite the ancestors to be present in a
Yes.
in a continuity of life.
So
They
it's
can,
the presence within you of that person or animal that matches the presence outside of that person or their energetic, their energy. Same thing could go with happiness. If you have internal happiness, it will match any type of external happiness that exists, right? That's
yep.
what you're saying.
I will see it. Well, yeah, if I feel it in me, I will also know it in others.
Yes. Same
Right?
thing with
I mean,
peace, right? If
because
you,
you know that moods are infectious, right? Somebody's
yeah,
laughing his head off, and just like, pretty soon you got a bunch of other people who are laughing their heads off. Nobody knows why anybody's laughing, but it's infectious, right?
yes,
Same if somebody's always looking over their shoulders because they're paranoid. Oh my God,
yep.
they're after us. Pretty soon you're looking over your shoulder too. So of course it radiates from us. It can't but, what is our state of being cannot but radiate from us.
Yes, yes. And that same thing around peacefulness. So if you
Yeah.
have that level of peacefulness inside of you, that which is peaceful outside of you will attract to that peacefulness inside of you. Even if there's chaos, even if there's stress,
Yeah.
you will be able to find the peace within it, within the
Yeah.
chaos, if you match it within yourself.
Yeah. Yep. And if people don't have peace but want peace, they will be attracted to the peace that they feel in your presence. That happens too.
That they want to feel.
Yeah.
Mm.
And so if you live that way, you become an influence in that direction. Doesn't mean you can make them go there or anything. You become an influence in that direction.
If you have forgotten that inside of you and you got sucked into the peace and, I mean, to the chaos and to the stress, is
Yeah.
there a quick path to it, Udo? Is there a quick path to that peace?
Yeah, why does everything have, we're talking about everything going too fast, but we want a quick path to peace.
Yep.
Yeah. Everybody wants that. I know. And everybody wants shortcut. And if they put a nickel in the machine, and I'm talking 1950s now, and the Coke doesn't come out, then you kick the machine and you hope the Coke will come out, right? No, it doesn't work like that.
Okay.
But as much as there's chaos these days, people feel a lot here.
Yeah. Heaviness.
See that? Yeah, heaviness in the heart. Heavy heart. That's a good word for it.
Yes.
But also empty and restless and blue and lonely and grief and loss and anxiety and depression sometimes. If you feel it here, find the feeling here. That's your starting point for coming home.
Okay.
Starting point for coming home.
So
that far behind, less than a hair's breadth behind this ache in the heart that is triggered by so many different things. Less than a hair's breadth is where your peace lives, is where your love resides. Less. And so what I say to people is, when you feel it, sit with it. Don't distract yourself from it, because it's calling you. It's calling you by name. It's calling you to come home to where all the goodies are. And you're ignoring it and keep in distractions, and all those distractions trigger more heartache every time they end. So sit with the heartache. Feel it. Don't judge it. Feel it. Won't kill you. Won't hurt you. Feel it. Accept it. Appreciate it. Embrace it. And maybe even be grateful for it, because it's like hunger to food. Thirst, ache is to wholeheartedness. Calling you home.
Calling you to a sense of being, right?
And I have never met anyone who doesn't know this feeling. They call it all kinds. I've got 10 pages of different names that people call it. Everybody knows this feeling. Almost nobody understands that this is the greatest gift we've been given other than being alive.
Presence.
This presence of this ache is the greatest gift we've been given other than being alive, because it's such a powerful call for us to come home to where we belong, to where we have everything we're looking for out there. We already have it in here. And if it wasn't for that call, we would never find our way home.
That is so beautiful. That really is. So many parts of this conversation is so beautiful. It pulls you into just the beauty of the moment.
And it doesn't matter whether you're talking about trauma or addiction or stress or whatever is your bad thing. Always pointing back to the disconnection that happened when we came out of our mother's womb and had to get used to the world. That's where the disconnection came from. You can't even blame it on anybody. Trauma sometimes triggers it, but it's a natural process. So we get disconnected, and then and that's automatic for survival by change. But coming back has to be deliberate, and the heartache is calling you to take that very small journey into your beauty and your power and your love and your strength and your peace and your wisdom and your genius and your intuition and your insight. It's all there.
That is beautiful. That is full circle. That's complete. And when you have that knowledge of what Udo just mentioned, it is a complete feeling. It's a peaceful feeling. It really is.
Yeah, everything's okay. Everything's.
Well, I want to let everyone know about the happiness course that you have that you've just put together. And if you go to the website there, which is udoerasmus.com/unifyhappy, and you'll be able to see the website there. Tell us a little bit about the course.
Well, the course is it's over 3 hours of 10-minute pieces done with interviews. Basically, it would be like if you were the interviewer and I was talking about the questions you asked. Very, very much like this. But
yes.
It was some other people that we did the interviews with. And it talks about all of those issues. And you will find that it will talk to whatever it is you're going through. Again, addiction, stress, trauma, drama, what else? Oh, pain, right? This pretty much covers everything. Pain of one sort or another. There's so many. But the cure for all of these, the way that you find your way out of them, it's through them and past them and deeper. And there's no pain that can go that deep, and there's no addiction that can go that deep, and there's no trauma that can go that deep, and there's no stress that can go as deep as your being goes. So have you own your own cure. It was built in from the beginning. Something much wiser than we are, kind of created the whole thing before we even had any idea.
And so this course, it's just modules that you go through with a lot of what Udo and I spoke about during the interview today, but in pieces of just happiness that you can understand, something that will help you understand this and sense this place of inner peacefulness. And when you grow and cultivate and practice that sense of inner peacefulness, you will find that greater joy and contentment comes from within you. So it doesn't matter what else is going to happen around you or in an environment or wherever you are. It's this, it's what's inside of you that leads you to that. That's what happiness from the inside out really means, right?
Yeah, and that's what's so cool about it, that you always have that with you. independent of whatever the next crisis is going to be, whatever the next disappointment is going to be, whatever the next breakup is going to be, whatever the next loss is going to be. You, independent of all of that, which is part of the world, right? Everything starts and ends. So, and there's a wise man who said, don't depend on things that end. You have within you something that never ends, something that is basically there waiting for you to rediscover and reconnect.
So when you say don't depend on things that are going to end, like maybe you're in a relationship knowing at some point that the person's going to die or go away, and you don't want to, you're saying don't focus on that, focus on the moment that you're in. But what happens when that person does die or go away? Everything
is the same, except it won't be as devastating.
That feeling of loss won't be as devastating?
No, of course, because look, I mean, loss is really stupid, right? I have a lamp here, right? I have a lamp here, and it shines a light here so that it's not a really bad shadow on the back. And I've been using that lamp now for a year. When that lamp quits, I'm gonna have a little bit of a loss feeling because I'm used to the lamp and now it's gone, right? Okay, same is true for anything. I have a book, I have a favorite book and somebody stole it. You know, I'm used to having that book.
But you can replace a lamp and a book. You can't replace a human.
Well, you can replace the humans too if you're going to go there, right? So it's not like, but the point is the reaction is the same. Why do you miss somebody when they're gone?
The feeling that they gave you, the specialness of that person. There's so many reasons.
Maybe even simpler. They occupied space in your world, and now that space is empty. Right? And whether that's good things and bad things, and you probably had your fights, and you probably had all of that, right? But it's a habit you have the habit that somebody is there, and when they're not there, then that shows up. And we call it missing somebody because they're missing from that space.
Right.
That doesn't change. But when we say don't depend on things that end, don't depend on your unconditional happiness that you need to bring into your relationship on the relationship. That's just one way to say it, right? My view is that if you don't bring happiness into the relationship because you don't know how to get to it, independent of triggers that you're always victim of, right? They happen to you. If you're not in charge of your own happiness and your lady is not in charge of her happiness, the one that doesn't depend on me, the one that doesn't depend on you, well, where's the happiness in the relationship going to come from? Because I'm thinking you're going to bring it and you think I bring it, and then we're both going to be disappointed. So don't depend on things that end for anything that you need to have unconditionally. What you need to have unconditionally is within you. There's an unconditional happiness that is independent of anything going on in my surroundings. And then, but I also have a human life. This is the energy life, right? This is the awareness life, energy life. I also have a human life, and in the human life there are interactions and there are people and there are situations and everything is a moving feast. I want to bring happiness into that world. I want to bring unconditional love into that world. I want to bring peace into that world, not expect it to come to
give
me.
it to you. Yes.
Yeah, right?
Right.
And then if you're with somebody who also has it set up that way because they're willing to do their homework, because this is all homework, right? If you're with somebody who's also willing to do your homework, imagine how wild and free that can be. Imagine how much fun you can have. Imagine how much you can play. Imagine what you can invent, what you can come up with, what adventures you go on, rather than always thinking, well, you don't send me flowers anymore. So like the relationship is over because you don't send me flowers anymore. Oh my God, I have to have flowers or else the relationship is over. That's pretty flimsy, isn't it?
Yes. So you're saying if you are reliant on your own internal happiness and the other person is reliant on their internal happiness, then together so much more is possible.
Yeah. And then you also, when one of them, when the body of one of them checks out, right, which is bound to happen sooner or later, and you still have your unconditional happiness, you still have your unconditional love, you still have your unconditional peace. You know that that indestructible aspect of them as well, because you know it within yourself. And so it makes everything easier. You know, when you're going to die, you'll make it easier on your kids, because you're not going to be going, oh, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die.
Yes.
But you're going to have fun with them. You're going to love them till you check out. And they'll be more comfortable with the fact that people check out too. So there's a lot of learning in just occupying the space your body occupies.
That is
everything.
beautiful.
And your wife has a bad day, you know, like I know that there's been a lot more violence and a lot more suicide, right? So if you know that place, you know, if I know that place and my wife has a bad day, I'm not ready to strangle her immediately. I might actually be an influence on her.
Yes.
To find her peace back.
Yes.
Something happened and she got triggered, right?
Or to anyone around you, your friends, your children, if you maintain that level of internal peacefulness and happiness, you can gift that as that, just being that presence. Absolutely.
And I can tell you for sure, no one has ever been violent to another person in a moment of complete peace. And no one has ever committed suicide, destroyed their own body in a moment of contentment.
You've got a great point there.
That's life affirming it is to live in the space your body occupies.
The more that you're talking about this, the more that it makes sense. It's a practice, and going towards that total happiness is possible. It's absolutely possible. And the course is beautiful. It's a 7-day path to greater joy and contentment, which is the total happiness course. And it's a beautiful thing to do. And the more I talk with you, the more I realize I could throw anything at you and it still comes back to this sense of internal peace. We've talked about a lot today. We've talked about, you know, loss and depression and suicide and everything. And you come back up against this place. These are tough topics. And you really come back to this place of practicing. It doesn't just happen with the quick path to it. I mean, you've got to be able to practice and grow and cultivate that inner peace and that knowledge, that inner knowledge of peace. Then it's something you will own forever. It's unshakable. Well, thank you so much. You are so just a joy to speak with. And I see why. You are always consistent. Every time I speak with you, you are consistent. I love that. And you can also find out about the course there if you go to Udo Erasmus it's on the bottom of the screen there. What is that again? udoerasmus.com/unify happy. Or there's a little QR code on there. You can also scan your phone onto the QR code and you can get access to the course right there. So thank you so much. This has been a joy. It's been happy to speak with you. And thank you so much for sharing this deep inner knowledge that you have, Udo. This is definitely something that we could all use that might be under a glaze of loss of happiness that we don't even know that we're under. This is a wonderful way to just listen to this interview and to listen to you speak, and it starts to make sense. Not all at once, but the more and more I speak with you, the more that it makes sense. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's always fun talking with you.
Always.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you can take it to the next level and you can find that inner happiness and you can take Udo's 7-day course. And it's beautiful. And it's udoerasmus.com/unify happy, or you can go to the little QR code, you can scan your phone there and you can get access to it that way as well. And I will say until next time, I always invite everyone watching to stay happy and to stay aware.